The program this morning is basically an introduction to the hotel industry and why it's so difficult to actually implement MI, the current state of MI in the industry, what we need and why we need it, and the solution, which is hopefully EIB inspired, and the future as well. Although from what I've seen this morning, some of the future is actually the present, but for the hotels, it's certainly quite a way ahead. So initially, introduction to the hotel industry. You know, everyone imagines that you've got a hotel with Hilton on the roof, and you think it's owned and operated by Hilton. But over the years now, you know, Hilton now supplies the name. You then have another company actually operating the hotel. You might have another company operating the restaurants, another company operating the spa. So it's a real, you know, combination of people. So that actually makes it very complicated. And then, of course, you have owners. They might be real estate investment trusts. They might be high net worth individuals. So you've got a lot of people there. And as Paul has experienced, trying to get to the right person to try and get them to sign off the investment is quite difficult, because all these guys have different business models. They all get rewarded in different ways. So actually persuading someone to actually pick up the cost and move forward is always probably the major challenge. And because of this, we have a lot of legacy systems in hotels that are basically Fidelia. They're called Fidelia, but they're now owned by Oracle. And these systems have kind of built up over the years. Fidelia bought out a point-of-sale system that operates the restaurants, etc. Then they bought out other systems, but no one's fundamentally rewritten the database so it's accessible. So we have lots of little pockets of data, and the real trick is to try and get all those pockets of data into one data mart that we can actually use. And also, you know, because we have different operators and different people involved, a lot of them are not always that transparent with the information they give you. I think someone mentioned earlier the uniform system of account, and they're obliged to give me a monthly accounts. But I, as an asset manager, want much more detail about what's going on in my operation. I'm not satisfied with monthly accounts. It just tells me what's happening at the end of the month, and not in that great detail either. And so, because of the diverse stakeholders within the industry, it's actually difficult to get someone to actually lead and actually sort some of these issues out. You know, who do we use? The operators claim that they want to have the intellectual property rights over their applications. The owners aren't terribly interested, they just want their return. So trying to get someone to actually lead the industry and introduce MI is quite difficult. So I'm trying my own little bit, because I'm trying to work with HOSPA now, Hotel Association, and they're setting up an asset management community, and I'm trying to move that forward and see whether we can do something as a community to actually bring in some decent MI into the industry. The current state of MI, we've got a lot of, as I said, you know, we had Fidelia, we've got a lot of different systems, a lot of different expertise. So in rooms, we've got things like revenue management systems, which are amazing. You know, if I wanted to know who stayed at this hotel on a rainy Sunday night in the winter, it will probably tell me, give me that information, tell me when they booked, how much they paid, and all the rest. But that's rooms. As soon as you start moving to other departments, it's different data, different experience, and there's nothing that actually ties the data up. So if I know who's staying here on those nights, I don't really know what they spent in other departments, nor do I know what profit we actually realise from those people, or I don't even know how much it costs to get that business in. You know, maybe we paid a lot of travel agent commission, maybe we didn't, maybe it was direct booking. So it's all that kind of information that's missing. We talked about Excel. I was a controller for the UK for Sheraton back in the 90s at one stage, and my first job was trying to kill as many Excel spreadsheets as possible and put it into a proper accounting system. I'm afraid I failed miserably, because every time I go into new hotels now, all I see is more and more spreadsheets. We got more and more information in the hotels, but somehow or other we're still using Excel to pull that data together and then interpret it. And the number of times, as Paul said, you find errors in the data and you begin to think, hell, we're being run on this, a lot of decisions being taken on this data, and yet it's factually incorrect. And the information only gets pulled together on a monthly basis, so I can't really see, in terms of profitability, my daily profitability, my weekly profitability, and I really want to know that information. I really want to have that information. So usually I have to really push all the time to get further information. And what does that mean? My poor controller has to go along, get his spreadsheet out and start creating the information. What a waste of time. One of the main things, our current project is really looking at a food and beverage department. And there we have a lot of catering events, we have a lot of weddings, we have some receptions where we have 1,000 people. And I really want to know what are the profitable activities and what are the less profitable activities, so we can actually drive that business. At the moment, the only thing we could do was to get someone again with a spreadsheet to go through it. And so we approached Paul to see exactly what we could do. And it's quite amazing, where we'll see it later, what is actually now possible. And of course, as I said earlier, it's not only activity, it's profitability by the customer as well. I want to see what each type of customer brings to me in the way of profitability. And then I know what I need to pay to acquire them, and I also know what I need to do to set targets for the sales managers. I think that speaks for itself. Excessive manual processing, and really most of the time is spent on preparation rather than the use of data. Again, Paul introduced this earlier, we really do need automatic data capture and audit and validation. And then once we've got that useful data together, we need to share it with everyone. If everyone's using the same data, it's quite likely that we're going to get much, much more accurate. At the moment, I see reports where page 1 says we had that occupancy in the hotel, page 3 has a different occupancy number. So everyone's producing their own report, working on independent sources, and no one's actually checking that it ties up. And of course, the more we know about the trends and the patterns and all the rest, the more we can do the forecast, create proper forecasts, and the more we can actually look at activities across the divisions. And wouldn't it be nice if we could take a decision on the, what activity followed based on the profit we could actually get, and actually reward people on profit. At the moment, we seem to reward everyone on the sales volume. But if that sales is not bringing any profit, what the hell are we doing? We're actually increasing the loss even more by paying the incentive. I did my presentation and Paul said to me, but what's it cost you? Well, you've got, it's okay, everyone has frustrations, everyone has annoyances, but it does actually cost us an awful lot. If we're not tracking the activities correctly, we're missing out some of the costs. And in hotels, every department has, everything's split by department. So, if I have a catering event, in another department I have my sales managers where I have the incentives, I pay them. In other departments, I'm paying fees to the operator. Other departments, I'm paying maintenance utilities. So it's only when I pull all this stuff together that I really know how much a catering event is making me. So at the moment, again, it's back to Excel, but that's where we're trying to get to, that we can actually say, okay, these are the various activities in the hotel, this is the profit they make. And of course, that's not even talking about the actual CapEx investment we make. The hotel, we actually have 5 external venues which we have to maintain, heat, clean, and all the rest. So you've got all that cost as well. You've got to take up front before you actually have your first wedding or your first reception. So all that has to be taken into consideration. A lot of the decisions are taken based on business, the rooms business. We don't look at the business that we generate from the guests in other activities, whether they use the golf course, whether they use the spa, whether they use the restaurants. And everything is based on that income, and that's obviously wrong. We need to start taking judgments on profitability, not income. And the worst thing about not tracking the trends is sometimes we have these beautiful venues, And the last thing I want to do is actually have a wedding at one venue with 70 people in July, when perhaps there's business for 150 people, so I'm only taking half the profit. We have a golf course where we need to see what the tee times are and the green fees are, and obviously we know one period is very, very busy. We can actually increase the green fees during that period. So all that kind of thing, with the trends, with the patterns, it can really influence the business we do. And something as stupid as just looking at cash receipts. I've seen problems in the past where the profile of the cash receipts is wrong, and we've actually found that someone's actually been misappropriating some funds. A little diagram just to really explain the silo approach. That's the rooms department, very separate. Information goes to a billing system, then goes to the account. So you're going from fairly rich detail here to more summarised to very summarised. So the idea is to try and replace that, well, not replace it, but actually take that information, put it into a data mart, and then have access to that information so that we can actually get true profitability. I think I will have a little break at this stage,
No
and
worries.
you can show them.
We'll see the app. So I'm just going to switch over to one of our demonstration servers because that's where we've got everything hosted. So from here, I'm going to show you the report studio, which is how we process things in Excel. So we take it once it's been processed in the back-end application. We'll then render it in Excel. It's not Excel, it's something put on top of Excel, but it's within Excel. So it's what people are used to, what they're used to seeing. And then we'll jump over to Power BI. So the first thing I'll do is just open up the application. Because we're using a native Excel add-in, we can actually just render things straight from the menu. So it's the right one, is it? Yeah. So from here I can just click on this link, and this is going to go away, look at our gallery, which is where we store all of our reports, and we'll come on to that later on in the day. But it'll actually pull up our menu for us. And then from there I've got my reports linked, I've got some dashboard links, I've got hyperlinks to our application, or the content as Power BI call it, which is in the web. And then we've got other things where if we wanted to go on to processing, if we wanted to do a manual process, we can do. But typically all of these sort of applications are done at the back end.
We basically set up a little model, saying it's a control model. And we said for this type of event, we expect to sell this amount, we expect the food to cost us such a percentage, beverage such a percentage, and then we expect so many man hours in there. So we set up all those models, the kind of business rules. And so we've used those to actually generate what we actually need to produce, the staff we need to take on, the in-house staff we use. So that's very, very effective. So it just shows you that you start off very simply, and then it's a little bit of creep, demand creep, but it really does show you where the payback is. And of course, once we have all that information, we can really decide which areas we're going to focus on and where we're going to concentrate our salespeople to actually bring the business in.
Thanks, David. So the first thing I'll do is just show you just one of our P&Ls, and this is simply based upon the current period and year to date. So essentially this isn't really going to be looking at a specific event, because an event is usually over a couple of days. But if you want to think of event types, or if you want to think of all of your events, or the manager, as we were talking about earlier, is the manager actually making you money? If the manager's selling these events and they're taking a concession off there, are you actually profitable on them? So essentially we've sort of, if you think back to the screens you've seen earlier, we've often had what we call a criteria or the slices in the top left. Just to make things a bit easier, you can see we've got 10 there. So instead of losing a whole load of real estate, we put them at the top. And then from here I can say, well, I've got my items in here, so what do I have? Well, I've got income over September. For example, we can see here we've got September selected, and this is for every single event. One of the other things we'll come on to a bit later is this version. So this is their real actual data with a little bit of sanitization here where we've got missing data, actually tell it what it needs to be. But we've also got benchmarking as well, which is how it should be as a total, and we can do a comparison against that. So for something like this, I might say, well, that's all well and good. Now I want to see event ID. And you might say to me, well, how can you have a year to date on event ID? Well, you can in a sense, but it's going to be exactly the same as the current period. So the integrity in the calculation is not going to show you anything ridiculous. And then from here I can say, well, I've got income, which is really good, which is made of food, beverage and other. So what if I want to see what's in the food? So if I double click, I can drill in to the next level. And this is all based upon a hierarchy we can link together. And so from here I can see, well, this was a recipe item, a menu item, and this is how much we sold. And I can see so on and so forth. But you'll then see there's an NA. So what does that mean? Is that bad or is that good? Well, actually, it's a bit of both. It's good in the fact that this is where we're capturing the delta between what it should be and what we've recorded, but it's bad because the customer hasn't done that. So they need to know if they see there's an NA in the report, they need to go and have a look and put the rest of the data in. But it's from here we can start to build up the logic of what's missing and what's actually there, because you know what you've sold, you know how much that is, but you don't necessarily have all of the records to show that. So it's a case of building up the fake transactions, or pretty much the deltas, to give us the true number.
And of course, it's very useful for the hotel management because they can see who's effective in actually following everything up, getting all the data in, and particularly if you've got some of these unclassified items in events that are just about to happen, you know they haven't done their job properly. So we have all that tracking possibility to see how effective the sales team are being, how they're actually updating things. So that's very, very useful.
Thanks, David. And what's also nice from here, where we've got the interaction of the drill in and drill down, you'll notice the integrity of the reports doesn't change. The formatting we've applied actually stays within there. You think one of the pains of Excel is that it doesn't really do that. If you add things in, it's usually cell-based unless you've got conditional formatting. So there we've got something which is a little bit nice. But what's also nice about this entire structure, we've got the usual thing in a P&L. We've got our income, cost of sales, salaries and wages. Now, just because the top level of income was open doesn't mean I can't do it on the rest, so I can quickly see, well, what's the cost for waiters, what's the cost for cooks, and likewise, if we can go to the bottom, we've actually got the amount of attendees and a whole raft of KPIs. So just from one event, we've gone from not really being able to see this, it takes a long time to get this information together. That's if we've even got all of the information. We haven't got the things substituted in because we know what they are, but I've actually got my KPIs based upon this one event. So I can actually clearly see that this was actually a profitable event, which is good. But there might be events where we think, well, we've got 300 attendees, this is going to be really good. Actually, profit percentage is minus 10, so it's not really profitable, as David said. So in terms of activity and what type of events, you know, you would think certain things would be better than others, but the story might not actually back that up. So this is just one of the reports which we go for, and current period year to date, and this is typically based upon events as a plural. We have got other things, so if I change this away from the event and just say, I want to see all events again, so I can select that, and then I'll say something else. So maybe give me it by event manager. So I want to see who is the best event manager, because I've already got September 2017 selected.
And no period. Star Wars here whatsoever.
No, these comedians, I'm not sure. We'll go with Kathy Bates. Hopefully she's been productive. So we can see, I'll just scroll back up to the top, so we can see same structure of the P&L. We're just looking at the events in September 2017 by Kathy Bates, and we're looking at the net movement. So this is the net of everyone. Now, what's also nice about these sort of reports is that we don't have to see the net of everyone. You might see, well, what are we actually making per person? You know, that might be able to tie that back into people who are staying over. So again, we can pick those up, draw that away, and it will give us the number per person. So this is how much we're making, or the cost it would be to support that person in the catering world. So that's just a touch on the sort of thing we're going for. And because
it's also quite useful because, as I say, we've got 5 venues. We pay different rents on each venue, or pay, percentage commission to the owners. So we can actually look at that analysis, and we can look at how much we're making each month against the money we have to pay each month to the owners. So we know what to do. And of course, we've just taken on a new venue, so we can use that kind of data to do a kind of forecast of whether it's worthwhile doing another venue or not. Because we know when we're busy, we know what the kind of profitability and the type of events. So very, very useful. It really does help us with our strategy.
Thanks, David. So the next thing, we'll just actually look at a profit and loss by event. So same sort of theme, but we're actually looking at different things in our column. So in the rows, we're always consistent that we always put the P&L in there, because that's really the key things we want to see. But what if we want to see different things? So I touched on earlier about we can change, we want to see the net of everyone, we might want to see the gross of everyone, or we might want to see it per person. In this example of a report, same sort of consistency, all of the slices or criteria along the top, but we're actually looking at the net, the VAT and the gross, and then we've got things like menu item quantity. So we might be thinking, well, how many menu items are we selling per event? Maybe we're thinking, well, quantity, how many waiters do we need? We need to work that out based upon attendees, based upon what type of the event, based upon where it is, and then what are the hours? So we're not just looking at cost, we're also looking at the impact throughout. What is the real cost in terms of time as well? And that's something which is usually quite hard to track. So to put that in as well, you've got a very clear view of your P&L. And the only real difference from this one to the other one, other than the content, what we're seeing right at the beginning, is that I've just expanded everything out, so we can see everything for cost of sales and salaries and wages. And we can go down other expenses which come through. And because we're looking at all events, we've got quite big numbers. But what's quite important here is that in September 2017, we look at the gross or the net were profitable, which is good. we know that. But if I then change this to see another month, and I'm going to use this deliberately because I know it's not complete data. So if we flip over to October, this should tell us a different story. We're actually not profitable, so that's very bad. But we might be picking up a lot. We might have really big events. We might be having 5 weddings, for example. You think you'd do very well. Actually, is that the true story? So the next report I'm going to show you is where we come into the version. So where we're thinking, well, we know what our actuals are, and if we don't, we put those in. But we have a control file which defines what they need to be. But we can also then compare that to what we know we should be making. So if we have an event, we know what the target is. So we've actually got a bit of a misnomer here. We called it benchmark, but we've gone back and forth about naming.
Yeah. It's really the target. You know, we need to have a target sales per individual, a minimum number of people for an event, and then the costs, profile of the costs as well, so that we have a very clear idea what we should be making. And of course, it's a reiterative process, because the more information we put through, the more we can challenge those targets, the more we think, actually, we're very soft there. We could actually make more money, or we haven't allowed enough of staff. We need to increase it. So, yeah, it's an ongoing process.
Sure. So if I just, the nice thing with these sort of reports, we've actually got an actual benchmark and a variance, and we actually define the reasons why there could be a variance based upon different rules. And there's nothing really fancy here at the moment. It's a case of, if there aren't any actual data, then we're going to tell you that. It was just really just showing the concepts here. But straight away, we've opened up to a certain month. There's nothing stopping me saying I want to see all time. So I'm not just interested in a certain month, I want to see all time. Now, because we've only got 3 months, all time is pretty much a quarter. But from here, I can look at all time. I might say I want to see years, but then I might say I want to see bookings. Now, I've spoken about events. In the hotel world, a booking can have multiple events. So it's a one-to-many, but a booking can only be, an event can only have 1 booking. But depending on the level and granularity I want to see, I might just say, well, you know, I know this booking's got 3 events, and I just want to see the overview. I don't want to have to go and select these events, because they might be called event number 300, event number 500,000. You're going all over a long list just to pick those things out. So I can very quickly just select and say, give me everything for booking 19. This will go away, give me the details for booking 19 based upon my actuals and what I should be targeting, and then it'll give me a variance based upon there as well. So if we look at all time, we know we've got dummy data in, so it's probably not doing justice to the hotel there. But if we think about, in this example, I've just looked at booking 19. I can look at the detail, which I'll show you in a sec, of what sort of event that is, but I can see actual to benchmark, I'm actually losing a bit. There's a variance, negative variance, and likewise, if we go down and check our KPIs, we'll also get a bit more of the story there as well. So straight away, even though we're profitable, we're not as profitable as we want to be. So again, just a bit more of the story that we have. And if I'm looking at bits of data like this and thinking, well, you know, is that actual true? If our benchmark's there, I want to go and interrogate that number. I can double click on that number, and what's going to happen now is going to produce a new sheet with a new report on the fly, giving me all of the details of my transactions. And then from there, the nice thing is we can actually define what goes into those transactional sheets, so we don't have to see, if you think about a database with a table or an Excel workbook of all of your information, you've got hundreds of columns, but you only need to see 5, then you don't need to see all of those. You can narrow that down as well. So in this example, we can see, well, what was the account name. We can go across. This data source is quite important. So we can see we've got things which we calculate, which are really the things where we're missing data. And then we've got the things which comes from something called daily costs, which is really where we get our transactional data. We can break down of the description of what they are. So in here we can actually see we've got 2 different events. One is a cocktail reception and one is a dinner plated. If I go across a bit further, you'll actually see some of the metrics within there as well. So we can pull all of that information in and interrogate the number, and then we can actually see, aha, this is the problem. By the looks of it, I can go and look at that number. So from there, you'll be able to see very quickly, we can actually get a few things to show quite fast. And then just flipping over to a dashboard version. This is more of an Excelism, it just takes a little while to render the images. But essentially, we're using gauge charts, and these will just give us different things on certain KPIs. So we've got our income of food, and then it should show us income of beverages, and so on and so forth. So we'll give this a chance just to show a couple. We won't linger here, purely because we then want to have a look at the Power BI. But because we actually have everything set up, and this is linked to the report, you don't have to go back and change it in the report to see update in this
and the other things to do with
dashboard.
The refresh, if you just flip to report and back
Oh
to
yeah,
dashboard.
you are correct. So if I go report and then dashboard,
I think that's
that's not too bad. It was a good idea. But essentially, these will then draw, and we'll have all of our gauge charts. And if we wanted to change, for example, I can still click here, and it will go away, look at my criteria, still connected to the report, and if I wanted to change, I can. Now, I'm not going to do it in this example because we've started to see the things to be drawn, but I'm actually going to show you now, well, that's all well and good. So if I'm an operator or if I'm in charge of the accounts like David is, I want to see the numbers. So that's good for me, I can go and interrogate that. But what if I want to go and see things from a summary view? Well, the next thing is I can go away to our Power BI service where we've published everything and just pick up summary information. I don't need to see all the numbers. But what's nice about this is it opens an app with a dashboard with certain reports, and because we've got them all connected, we can pick things up and interrogate them. So straight away, I've got a few different areas. I'll go over this a bit more in our Power BI session, which I'll be running with Baha. But from here, I can quickly see some key metrics. So I'm in a dashboard. I've got some key metrics here, and I say, well, I want to interrogate this one a bit more. If I click on that, that's actually going to go away and open the report where that's hosted, or it will give me a viewed version of it. So on this occasion, I'll try and, yeah, can't exactly remember where that is.
It's just the top left there.
This one, yeah. Thank you. So this will put us into full screen, so we're not going to lose any real estate. But essentially, we have a consistent approach as well. So all of our dashboards have the same sort of approach. We always have a logo at the top left, a title, KPIs along the top if we need them. Sometimes we don't, and then the slices on the bottom. And if you notice, I just clicked and it opens up the sheet within the report where that chart was. But what if I want to see the impact of this manager? So what John Charles hasn't done particularly well over this period of time. So if I click on that, it's actually going to go and narrow down the other reports so I have another view of what I need to see. So it's not going to give me the pure numbers, but it is going to give me an understanding of where I need to be. And now I'm actually in the report, I can have a look at other things.
Sorry, Andy, that's an interesting one actually. If we just go back there a second,
Yep.
you can actually see that in that. I know this is a fictitious manager,
Yeah.
but you can actually just click on.
Yep.
You can see that actually on the formal dinner on the right hand side and then the net, he actually made the company's position worse. Actually, he made a bigger loss overall, and it was actually other people bringing that back to still a less of a loss as a result of seeing that performance.
Indeed. But essentially we can tell a story with our dashboards as well. So we don't just have to have charts. We can have a look at, it's a bit of a broken one of my rules here, so I don't like having different chart types in the same report, but sometimes that's okay. Something like this, I'm looking at, I want to see the profit, which I've got selected here. Now I could change this and say I want to see other things we've got in here. I might want to see the income or cost of sales. I'm happy with profit. And I've got my actual version. I've got a breakdown of the types of events just as a number. I've got them based upon descriptions, which is essentially this sort of matrix as a line chart. Then I'm seeing my growth or not growth, and then likewise in this waterfall chart, I can see exactly the same. And then once I'm from there, I might think, well, that's where I need to see the event summary. So I can understand my position as an overview of time, what about as event. So I've got manager, event status, and event type. And then the last thing, if I really wanted to see the numbers in Power BI, and I'm not really sure anyone wants to do that because it's not as fast, it's a good way of showing it once you're in there. You do have the option of checking these things out. So I could say, give me a specific event, and it will go and draw me that event. And if I wanted to see a breakdown of things further, so if you think back to the P&L we've seen in the report studio, we have a high level. What if I want to go to the next level? So I can click in on Power BI and it's going to go away and give me everything for the next level. So you can render these things and show them in Power BI. It really does depend on the approach you want to take.
And it's quite good as well because we can actually see the calendar. If we want to see for what's happening in October, we can just pull up the calendar for October, and then we've got a report for the day. We know which days we're busy, which days we're empty, and that actually helps us do all the staffing and sort things out. So it's very good.
So just to summarise on that, if you want any questions, I'm running a bit late. This is my fault. I've overspoken as usual, but please approach me during any of the interval sessions. But I'll just pass back to David so we can.
Yeah, I mean, this is just showing you basically within a division we don't have the profit by activities, we just have these costs in groupings, but that's not useful to me. All I get is a profit at the end of the month, and really I want to know what the profit is by activity. So the solution, obviously EiB Analytics, and having a data sharing platform is so effective. And just going through the business logic, setting up the targets, asking people what they actually do. I mean, the number of things we found out from just inquiring with the people what they do is incredible. You know, we assumed that the salespeople knew what they were selling, the cost of what they were selling. I found out early on that they didn't. And that was a little bit of a shock for me as I represent the owner, but it was kept very quiet. And we can use, everyone's got their own little silo, where everyone's working in a silo, but a lot of them have got some very, very good skills. So it's good to apply those skills throughout the whole hotel. And the more we can do that, the more we can train people up, the more our profitability is going to increase. And as I said, it's all about understanding activity profitability and deciding things on up-to-date facts. The fact that our ingredients are updated all the time, our menu costs are updated. Previously, we worked out the menu costs and that just stayed fixed. It wasn't updated. Nowadays, everything can be updated. We can be working on the latest prices, and we know roughly where we need to go in terms of what we suggest. And well, that's what it's all about. IT flair from these guys and a bit of hotel experience from my team at the hotels. Okay, we know the selling costs, we know the cost prices, we can work on labour productivity and bulk purchasing. Fantastic. We know the trends, time of day, day of the week. We know when we can sell cheap, when we can sell expensively. Our forecasting is more accurate, so we can actually do things. And of course, we can rank the sales manager by profitability, by how proactive they are, etc. It gives us all that data. And of course, if we know the costs and can go out to a customer and say to them very quickly, okay, we can do that deal. At the moment, they have to phone up the chef prices things up, but there's nothing like actually sitting in front of someone and saying, okay, this is what it's going to cost you. And they will often sign the contract. I think there's been some case study that proves that the case. If people are reasonably happy, if you go away and give them 7 days, one thing's for sure, they're going to go and do some other shopping in that time to just check the price. But if you can actually sign the deal at that time, you're there. You're often there. And having a common platform means we don't have to have these awful old systems that some of them don't even deal with VAT. Everything's done gross. So if we've got a common platform, we can then plug the data, provided we get new systems that plug the data, we can actually change those systems out instead of trying to change 6,500 systems within a hotel. That's yeah. And so the effort goes from production to actually action and actually using the data. So for an investment of 50 to 100, we reckoned at the hotel, because of the what we would save in food costs, beverage, and all the rest, we probably get a payback within about 6 months. Next step, as I say, use of facilities, not booking out large venues for small events when we know it's busy. Demand pricing, we can do that. Better tracking the guests, we actually know which guests bring us the most profit, and using profit as a measure rather than revenue. And icing on the cake, sharing the data across all management. Cost-aware sales team, they actually know the cost of what they're selling. Improve commercial, as I said, the fact you can complete a contract very quickly, and then benchmarking. And the future, well, I think I'll leave that to Paul this afternoon, but it's more or less about using multiple properties, cloud-based, Power BI, and of course, we're talking about one hotel looking at events. But if you're a Marriott, for example, you've got 6,500 hotels. You introduce something like this, and then you buy for 6,500 hotels or 50 of the regional hotels. The impact this will make will be absolutely dramatic.